Hello friends! Today I want to tell you a beautiful story about the incredible power of maternal love in the animal kingdom. One day, a she-wolf found her pup wounded in the forest. Realizing that she couldn't help him on her own, she went to a human house to ask for help. This is a story about how even wild animals can have human emotions and how important it is to respect and protect the life of all living beings. A young she-wolf was raising her pup. She went hunting only when he was asleep. Unfortunately, some evil hunters came across the pup one day. They kicked him around, and then one of the hunters decided to pick up the pup and take him home. He was probably going to put the pup on a chain and show the animal off to his friends. But the pup bit the man's hand, so he threw the animal to the ground and kicked him very hard. Then he raised his gun and fired a shot. Terrible pain pierced the entire body of the gray pup. His hot, red blood started flowing from the small wounded body. The pup lay on its side and whimpered softly, pitifully pleading for help. With every minute, the sound became quieter and weaker. The men started arguing loudly. One of them said, "You shouldn't have done that. What did you expect? It's not a kitten. It's not supposed to purr." The horrible person who shot the pup replied, "Well, he was born a wolf. He'll die like a wolf." When the she-wolf sensed that something was wrong, she stopped her hunt and rushed back to her pup. He lay motionless on his side, moaning softly and plaintively. He was losing strength by the second. The she-wolf sniffed her pup and licked the blood on the grass. She threw her head up to the sky and howled loudly. The local farmers have never heard such a howl. There was pain, despair, love, and hate all mixed in that sound, as well as the desire to save her pup, take revenge on the person who wounded him. The local forester, Matvey, knew and loved his forest. He destroyed over 100 traps and nursed over a dozen animals of all kinds back to health. He helped deer and wolves who fell into traps, as well as hares and squirrels that fell into snares. Hearing the howl, the forester stepped out of his hut and listened carefully. Both the silence and the sounds of the forest seemed different that day. Something awful had happened. Louise brought out the man's jacket and carefully threw it over her husband's shoulders. Hugging him from behind, she said quietly, "Maybe things will work out on their own. Maybe you don't have to be so worried." The man turned to his wife and said, "Louise, have I ever been wrong?" The she-wolf went out to meet the forester. He didn't have time to move even a dozen steps from the gate when he saw this strong but grief-stricken she-wolf holding her dying pup by the scruff of his neck. She carefully lowered the pup to the ground, bared her deadly snow-white fangs, and howled again. Louise blessed herself and stepped out of the gate with a gun in her hands. Matvey turned around and told her to leave the gun behind. The she-wolf stepped back a little and lay on the ground. She stayed silent for the rest of the night. The next morning, Matvey stepped out of the house and squinted his eyes. The rising sun was very bright. The fog crept over the grass, leaving tiny, barely noticeable droplets of water on it, as if it was trying to wash away the blood that was senselessly shed just yesterday. Birds were singing their amazing songs, interrupting each other. The little wolf pup lay on a warm mattress covered with a snow-white sheet. He was breathing evenly. The bullet that wounded him lay in a small bowl on the table among the bloody bandages. Exhausted after the sleepless night, Louise was napping on a bench nearby, her back resting against the wall. The blood of the rescued wolf pup had caked on her hands. The man opened the gate and met the she-wolf's eyes. She lay in the same spot as she did yesterday and looked at the man with hope and despair in her eyes. She lifted her sharp muzzle and seemed to ask a silent question. "He's okay. Your pup is alive. He is sleeping. Don't worry, Mommy. He'll be fine," he told the wolf and reached for his cigarette case. The she-wolf wagged her tail like a dog and then suddenly dashed into the forest. A little later, the she-wolf appeared from behind the bushes. She was holding a huge capercaillie in her teeth. It was probably the same prey she had to abandon the day before. She moved closer to the people and laid her prey on the grass. She gazed intently into the eyes of the good humans and threw her head up, letting out a long howl. Then the man brought out the pup and laid him on the grass. The she-wolf licked the man's hands and leaned in towards her pup. The wound was bandaged, but the mother wolf carefully licked it several times. The pup stretched and yelped in pain. The she-wolf bared her fangs, growled softly, and gently took the little pup by the scruff of the neck. Matvey and Louise looked silently after the she-wolf and her pup as they retreated into the forest. They returned to their element, to their home. But that's not the end of our story today. Some time passed, and packs of wolves had to go deeper into the forest, since people armed with chainsaws and guns imagined themselves to be the kings of all nature and went about destroying everything around them. The leader led the pack further and further away from the danger. The pups obediently clung to their parents, and the gray-haired she-wolf tried to keep up with her son. She was proud of him. Her pup, once wounded by a man, became the leader and now walked in front of the pack. Sometimes he stopped, listening to the sounds around him, and then continued on his difficult path. His pack closely followed. Suddenly, they heard an unfamiliar noise. It was growing louder. A helicopter flew over their heads and landed, barely avoiding the huge cedars. For decades, the old forester had been living in the taiga, next to its rightful owners. He grew to be a part of this forest, and the people and the helicopter were foreigners. They didn't belong there. Realizing that they would start shooting the innocent animals again, he hugged his wife, took his gun, and headed for the place where the uninvited guests landed. He needed to walk for several hundred meters along the river. There were a few minutes left before the fatal shot and the terrible, inhuman howl. So what? Let's have a great time. You set up camp, and I'll teach my son to shoot. I know these places, said the overly confident and arrogant helicopter pilot. Alex, why does he need to hunt? Can't we do without it? You said that you were going to fish, not hunt, the young beautiful woman said bitterly and straightened her jet black hair. Kira, stay out of it. I know how to raise my son, her husband snapped. Dad, why do I need to do this? Are we really going to shoot animals? The little boy asked. Yes, you have to shoot an animal. That's the most important part. It doesn't even matter who you shoot, a hare, a wolf, a squirrel, or even a bear. But Dad, I feel sorry for them all. They don't have guns. It's not fair, said the boy, breaking into tears. Stop that whining. Be a man. I shot a wolf here once. Wolves are our enemies. The boy had no way of knowing that several years ago, his father didn't shoot an adult wolf, but rather a helpless wolf pup. Or the pup that survived and was now standing 100 meters away from them. Nor could he have known that the wolf mother who had asked humans to help her dying pup was also nearby. Kira felt that something was wrong, but she couldn't have even suspected that her son would end up being in the same position as the unfortunate wolf pup once was. The wolves were on alert and looked at their leader. He stood motionless. All of a sudden, he sensed that same smell, the smell of death. His mother smelled it too and bared her deadly fangs. Adult males gathered around the leader, as if on command. They were about to go into a fight. She-wolves quietly took their pups farther and farther away from the people. The elderly she-wolf looked back at her son. He stood there, strong and confident, just like his father once was. Big, bold, unstoppable. What are you going to do with that gun? Can't you hold it properly? How many times do I have to show you? The man growled and snatched the gun from his son. Alex, wolves! The woman whispered in a trembling voice and pulled her son towards her. The leader looked straight into the eyes of his rival. The man threw up his gun and pulled the trigger. Misfire. The wolves were encircling the people. The man raised his gun and misfired again. Terrified, Alex threw the gun to the ground and a shot rang out. Terrible pain pierced through the boy's body. He lost consciousness and started falling down. His mom looked at him in horror and couldn't believe that was really happening. Everything was fine just a moment ago. Why? Why? Alex screamed and rushed to his son. The wolves were very close. The leader stood a few paces away, his fangs bared. Alex backed away and began to crawl back into the bushes on all fours. The wolf followed him. The mother pressed her son to her chest and couldn't even scream. The wolves surrounded the people, but didn't dare to approach them. The woman continued to howl, holding her son close to her body. Suddenly, an old she-wolf came forward. She understood the woman's pain. Losing one's child is unbearable. She sat close to the people. Matvey and Louise jumped out into the clearing and froze. Several wolves have surrounded a woman with a child and an old she-wolf. She looked around and bared her fangs, trying to prevent the pack from attacking the people. The leader emerged confidently from the bushes. He looked around menacingly, approached the mother of the child, and led the pack away. The old wolf followed them. After moving a few tens of meters away, she turned and lay down on the ground, watching what was happening from afar. "He'll live. We got here in time." The bullet missed the lung. "He's just in shock from the pain. It'll pass soon," Louise said, and looked back at the she-wolf. She continued to lie there, just like she did several years ago when she was waiting for the forester and his wife to help her pup. Kira was gently stroking her son's head. She felt someone watching her. Raising her eyes wet with tears, she looked at the she-wolf. Their eyes met. They both understood the devastating pain. They both experienced true horror. Friends, that's all for today. Like the video, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you next time.